In 1896, the Light Railways Act was authorised by Parliament, allowing a number of restrictions previously imposed upon railway companies' building aspirations to be removed. In return, the new light railways were restricted to a limited weight per axle and a maximum speed of 25 miles an hour. In December 1897, the Basingstoke and Alton Light Railway became the first authorised under the new Act, and construction began the next year in July 1898, with the first cut being made next to the Thornycroft Vehicle Works, the site of which is now occupied by a Morrison supermarket by the then President of the Board of Trade, Charles Ritchie. At 12 miles in length, stations were constructed to serve the intermediate villages of Cliddesden, Herriard and Bentworth and Lasham. An additional private station was later added close to Alton to serve the aptly named Lord Mayor Trelaw's Cripples Home, and was known under three names: Alton Park, Cripples Home Siding and Trelaw's Hospital Platform. For the first few years of the line's existence, passenger use was sparse. In 1917, at the height of the First World War, the track between Thornycroft's and Lord Mayor Trelaw's Hospital was taken up and shipped to France in order to help with the war effort. At the end of hostilities a year later, however, the rails failed to return. Only after strong petitions was the track reinstated, and this wasn't until 1924. With the railway running again, custom continued to be light, and in 1932 passenger services ceased. Freight services continued between Basingstoke and Bentworth and Lasham until 1936. When that was ended, the rails were lifted for good. Despite a very uneventful existence of just 35 years, the line found immortal fame when it was used to film two movies, The Wrecker in 1929 and Oh Mr. Porter in 1937. Saturday, the 1st of June 1901, at 9:15 in the morning, the first passenger service to Alton left Basingstoke from this platform, former platform 1A. Now, 119 years later, the platform hasn't seen a train since the 1980s, with weeds now replacing track. In this view, taken in 1963, the former Alton platform can be seen on the extreme right, occupied by a train. While this photo from the 1980s clearly shows platform 1A with a train bound for Salisbury. And the same view today in 2021. Largely intact, it wouldn't take too much work to bring this platform back to life. Leaving Basingstoke and platform 1A behind, we will now head west in the direction of the first station stop on this line, Cliddesden, and see what's left of this long disappeared piece of history. In this short clip, keep an eye on the nearest out-of-use track on the left. This is the line to Alton, which will sharply branch away from us as it turns south. Turning to our trusty friend, the National Library of Scotland mapping site, you can see the line branching away from the main line on a steep embankment. From here it would head towards the Thornycroft Vehicle Works before continuing on into Basingstoke. The line which you saw branch away from the main line continues for just a few short yards before ending with a set of buffers. This is the last in situ track. It definitely dates from the last use in the 1960s and quite possibly even earlier. The track bed, now devoid of track, crosses into this small copse of trees. Making my way through, I'm attempting to follow the route as it steeply curves away. Unfortunately, at this point there's little to indicate that a railway once crossed through here. Then, amongst the trees and brambles, some fence posts appeared. Their alignment curved sharply away towards the south, exactly as the line would have done. Quite old and rotting, they seem to match the trackbed with two lines as if flanking something, and the distance between seemed to be a pretty good width to place a single railway line. Without firm evidence it's impossible to confirm, but I think these fence posts mark out the route of the track as it headed towards Thornycrofts. The fence post stopped just a few yards from the edge of the copse, possibly more evidence that this is the correct route, as here a steep embankment would have carried the line forward, ridding the need to fence the line off. Obviously today the embankment has long since been landscaped away. Now before we go any further, let's have a look at a modern map just to get some sort of a context as to where we are. At the top of the page you can see the main line which runs into Basingstoke. That's indicated by the red arrow. Our branch line to Alton, you see that green, sharp green curve that comes off the main line. That's where I was walking through the trees and found the fence posts. The line would have carried on that curve on a very steep embankment, gone through the point where the car park is, and then it would have in fact where you see the main road going from north to south, that is the route of the line. This arrow indicates the aforementioned Morrison's supermarket, which is built directly on the site of the old Thornycroft Vehicle Works. Now if we go back to the 1950s map, we see the line branching off away from the main line. The line to Alton had actually closed at this point, although the trains were still running to Thornycrofts. Now if you look at the red arrow on the buildings, that is the site of, well, that's Thornycroft's Vehicle Works, where I said which is now the Morrison's supermarket. Now, returning once again to the modern day map, there another red arrow. This shows us the point at where we will now carry on exploring. Standing just to the side of the current Worting Road Bridge, you can see it couldn't be more different from its predecessor. Behind the hedge is Worting Road Cemetery. This was here at the time of the railway, which more or less hugged it as it went south, albeit a few feet lower than where this photo shows. This slip road disappearing into the distance takes you onto the A340, or Ringway West as it's known locally, which sits in a deep cutting. Looking north you can see the cutting quite clearly. The route of the railway would have followed the carriageway directly in front of us. And here we face south with the roadway still following the former track bed. At this point the line would have slew across to where the central reservation now sits as it approached Winchester Road Bridge. Now I was curious regarding the cutting which runs south of Worting Road Bridge as to whether its size and width in particular was dug when the railway was constructed, or whether it was widened to accommodate the dual carriageway which now sits at the bottom. Now, looking at the National Library of Scotland map of 1961, the cutting is clearly visible dead centre running north to south, and you can see the track hugging the cemetery boundary and what appears an extremely wide cutting. Changing to the modern map, we can clearly see the cutting once again, running north to south, which obviously now carries the A340, and it is indeed exactly the same width, or more or less the same. So it seems an incredible amount of engineering was exacted back then in, 1898, simply to accommodate a single railway line. Could this be the old bridge abutments of the Winchester Road Bridge? I think it's certainly a possibility when you bear in mind Winchester Road used to run right through what is now the roundabout. The footpath that now sits on that alignment is in exactly the same place. There is two large mounds either side of it flanking it at good height for an embankment. That embankment right across the roundabout would have gone across the road there. The road obviously wasn't there. Not on the embankment you see now, but one to the right, so a little bit deceiving. But looking at what we have on Winchester Road roundabout is a clear, what looks to me like an embankment. If anyone knows for certain or has any other information, then please let me know in the comments. But I think these are the remains of Winchester Road Bridge. At the top of Weller Road, for those who know it, just before it descends to Winchester Road roundabout, the line would have passed across the path in front of us in this photo and into the trees on the left. There's a clearly discernible cutting within these trees, but the undergrowth is so dense it's almost impossible to penetrate, and when I actually did, you couldn't make out any contours on the photos. But at least you can clearly make out the route the line would have taken. Buildings behind the trees are on the site of the old Weller hair products factory, while the field I'm walking on once contained what was known as Cranbourne Nurseries. Now it's an open space containing a children's playground. Again, I find myself on another roundabout, Viables roundabout this time. However, this one has something interesting right in the middle. Viables once had a level crossing where I believe a fatality occurred. It was also a bridge which carried the railway, and now it's a roundabout. It also has a piece of track right in the middle. Now, this was put in the 1970s, I believe, and it sits pretty much on the alignment of the line, probably just a couple of feet out. But it's a great reminder and a great relic to just show people that a railway once ran through here. We're now on the edge of Basingstoke, with only an industrial estate and the M3 motorway south of us before countryside. After passing Viables Crossing, or going under the bridge, depending on the year, trains would enter a shallow cutting. Parallel with Jay's Close on Viables Industrial Estate, that cutting still exists for a short distance, as it makes a straight path towards Cliddesden. You can see as I walk through the undergrowth that the cutting is visible. I've always thought it would be interesting to know that when the track was lifted, was anything left behind? Who knows, after 85 years, are there rotting sleepers or other artefacts just under the surface waiting to be discovered? So let's have another look at the modern day map just to see where we are. Now at the top centre, just off to the left of top centre, you can see half of Viables roundabout. That's where the piece of track is. I've now moved through the trees going southeast towards where the red arrow is. Those are the trees that I was walking through with the cutting. Now the red arrow indicates Jay's Close again. Jay's Close is neither a close, it's also about 3 roads in one, as you can see by the map. The next piece, if you follow the tree line, you can't access that, it's private property, and you can see it goes all the way to the M3 motorway. So here we are on Jay's Close, and let's continue. Now I'm walking along at Jay's Close, This is the bit that loops round, so we haven't been here before. Now, the trees that you can see coming in from the right and flanking the road, that's the track bed, our route. They would have carried on. Now, to our left is a brand new police station, and I think accessing the track bed there is pretty much out of bounds. This piece of track bed, I think it's pretty much intact with a bit of a cutting in. That goes all the way to the M3 motorway. Then over the motorway, and we begin our journey into Cliddesden. South of the inaccessible track bed from the M3 motorway, we arrive in Cliddesden, almost our journey's end for this episode. But not quite, as the station was built just over a mile away from the village. But here, on Farley Road, can be found the first remains of architecture from the railway. This is Farley Road Bridge, or rather the single remaining abutment. The opposite side was demolished to make way for a residential building. It was actually here that the LSWR wanted to build their station, which would have made sense as it's in the village centre, but I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, due to petitions from farmers and landowners who thought that it would be more accessible for them to have their station built a good way down the line, it was there that it was constructed. Now incorporated into somebody's front garden, the house of which incidentally is named Railways, was demolished in December 1962. And interestingly, if you examine every disused railway bridge in the UK, they will bear a white painted square with a code on. This relates to the bridge number and name of the line. So in Farley Road Bridge's case, bridge number 4, BAA, Basingstoke and Alton. As for DFD, I don't know what that means, so if anyone can enlighten me, please leave mention in the comments. On the opposite side of Farley Road Bridge, despite levelling work near to the road where the house was built, the embankment is clearly discernible heading south as it climbs what appears to be a hefty gradient. At the top of the hill, the trackbed is bisected by the footpath, where a view either side of the trackbed is just possible. This view, with the quaint caravan sitting there, looks south onto what would have been, to the driver's eye, the final length into Cliddesden station. Taking the footpath to the opposite side of the trackbed, it now leads right up to the old station site, running along the bottom of the embankment.
Ow. Ow. Ow.
After I finished being stung, I found some original cast iron fence posts which ran all along the bottom of the embankment. Sticking out of the ground at regular intervals, it was hard to imagine they'd been there for 120 years. While some still had the joining wire attached to deter trespassers from entering a railway gone since 1936. Back to the path and nettles. In front of us was the site of Cliddesden station, with the railway cottages built for station staff visible to the right. Cliddesden station has been immortalised by the movie Oh Mr Porter. In 1937, International Films approached the Southern Railway for use of a station to film their movie. The railway obliged with the offering of the recently closed Cliddesden station. Starring Will Hay, Maul Marriott and Graham Moffat, the film depicted a Northern Irish station staffed by bumbling buffoons as they foil the deeds of smugglers. For the film, Cliddesden became Buggeleskelly, complete with fake platform buildings and signal box. Despite the fake buildings, these stills from the film give great impressions of how the station looked in 1937 and how it fitted into the countryside in a way we can only imagine now. This shot shows the level crossing in great detail and the track as it crosses the embankment en route to Basingstoke. This one shows the level crossing from the opposite side. And exactly the same view in 2021. Dead centre of this photo, the brick base of the wind-powered water pump is visible, which could be seen many times in the movie. Unfortunately, very little recognisable stuff exists at Cliddesden station. This is largely due to most of it being on private land and surrounded by very high bushes and trees. The station platform does still exist, but it was buried many years ago.